My name is Grant Solen, and I used to think the worst thing about being married to a yoga instructor was listening to her talk about chakras at breakfast. Turns out, I was wrong. The worst thing is finding out she's been aligning more than just her spine with someone else. It started on a Tuesday night in October, the kind of Maine evening where fog rolls off the Kennebec River like cigarette smoke in a dive bar. I was sitting in my basement workshop, fixing a broken lamp, because that's what logistics managers do when we're not coordinating freight shipments. We fix things that other people break. The irony wasn't lost on me. Nora was supposed to be at another late-night wellness retreat with her new circle of friends. These retreats had become a weekly thing ever since she started hanging around Jasmine Crawford and her crew of Instagram influencers and trust fund yogis. Funny how enlightenment always seemed to require expensive wine and staying out until 2 a.m. I heard her car pull into our driveway around 11:30, which was early for one of her spiritual journeys. The front door creaked open, and I could hear her trying to tiptoe across the hardwood floors in those ridiculous heels she'd started wearing. Heels to yoga, because that makes sense. "Grant?" she called down the stairs, her voice higher than usual. "Are you still up?" "Just communing with this lamp," I called back, trying to find its inner light. She didn't laugh. Nora used to laugh at my jokes, back when we were just 2 kids from Portland who thought owning a Victorian house in Augusta would make us adults. That was 3 years and a lifetime ago. I heard her moving around upstairs, the floorboards creaking in that familiar pattern that meant she was pacing. Something was wrong. Well, more wrong than usual. When I finally climbed the stairs, I found her in our bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed with her head in her hands. Her yoga mat was still rolled up by the door, bone dry. Interesting, considering it had been raining all evening. "How was the retreat?" I asked, leaning against the doorframe. "It was enlightening." She didn't look up. "I bet. Learn any new positions?" That got her attention. She lifted her head, and I could see mascara smudged under her eyes. Her lipstick was gone, but there was a faint mark on her collarbone that definitely wasn't there when she left. "What's that supposed to mean?" I walked over to our dresser and picked up the small black phone that was sitting next to her jewelry box. "Well, for starters, since when do you carry 2 phones?" The color drained from her face. "That's not mine." "Really?" "Because it's been buzzing with text messages for the past hour. Messages from someone named Spencer." I held up the phone, watching her expression crumble. "Want to explain why Spencer thinks you have amazing flexibility and can't wait for your next private session?" Nora stood up quickly, reaching for the phone. "You had no right to look at that." "I had no right?" I pulled the phone back, laughing despite myself. "Nora, you left it sitting out in the open, next to a photo of us at our wedding. The symbolism is a little heavy-handed, don't you think?" "It's not what you think." "Oh, it's exactly what I think. And apparently, what Spencer thinks too. Judging by these photos he sent, he thinks quite a lot." She sat back down hard like someone had cut her strings. "Grant, I can explain." "I'm sure you can. You've always been creative." I scrolled through the messages, my voice getting colder with each revelation. "Let's see. Tuesday night wasn't a wellness retreat. It was dinner at Spencer's penthouse. Last week's meditation workshop was actually a weekend at his cabin in Bar Harbor. And that spiritual cleansing you did last month? Well, that's definitely not what I'd call it. Please, just listen to me. I am listening. I'm listening to 3 months of lies, Nora. I'm listening to you planning your next rendezvous while I'm downstairs fixing the lamp you broke when you were rushing out to see him last week." She started crying then, those practiced tears that had worked on me for years. "It just happened, Grant. I didn't mean for it to." "Which time?" "Because according to this phone, it's been happening a lot." "You don't understand. Spencer makes me feel alive. He makes me feel like I matter." "And I don't?" "You make me feel safe, comfortable. But that's not enough anymore." I nodded, setting the phone down on the dresser. You know what, Nora? You're right. I do make you feel safe. I pay half the mortgage on this house. I co-signed the lease on your yoga studio. I even bought you that car you drive to your secret meetings. I make you feel so safe that you can afford to take risks with other men. It's not about money, isn't it? Because Spencer drives a Tesla and lives in a penthouse. I drive a pickup truck and fix lamps in the basement. I can see the appeal. She wiped her eyes, smearing her makeup even more. My friends think, there it is. Your friends think. Let me guess. Jasmine and her crew think I'm holding you back from your full potential. They think you deserve someone more exciting, more successful, more like Spencer. They want what's best for me. No, they want entertainment. You're their pet project, Nora. The girl from the middle-class marriage who can be upgraded to something more Instagram-worthy. I walked to the window and looked out at the fog rolling through our neighborhood. Mrs. Halloran's house across the street was dark, but I could see her cat sitting in the window, watching everything like a furry security camera. So what happens now? I asked without turning around. I don't know. Well, I do. You're going to pack a bag and go stay with Spencer, or Jasmine, or whoever will have you, and tomorrow you're going to call a lawyer. Grant, please, can't we talk about this? I turned back to face her, and for the first time in months, I really looked at my wife. She was still beautiful, still the girl I'd fallen in love with in college, but somewhere along the way, she'd become someone else. Someone who needed constant validation, constant excitement, constant proof that she was special. We just did talk about it. You told me I make you feel comfortable, but that's not enough. You told me your friends think you can do better. You told me Spencer makes you feel alive. What exactly is left to discuss? I love you. No, you don't. You love the idea of me. You love having a backup plan. But you don't love me, Nora. If you did, you wouldn't have spent 3 months sneaking around with Spencer while I was downstairs fixing our broken lamp. She started crying harder, and I felt something inside me finally break. Not my heart. That had been cracking for months. Something else. Something that had been holding me back from accepting the truth. Pack a bag, I said quietly. Go be with Spencer. Go be with your friends. Go find whatever it is you think you're missing. But don't come back here expecting me to be your safety net when it all falls apart. What if I don't want to leave? Then I will. But either way, this marriage is over. I walked out of the bedroom, leaving her sitting there with Spencer's phone and 3 years of lies. I had work in the morning, freight shipments to coordinate, a real life to get back to. But first, I had some planning to do. The next morning, Nora was gone. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter, something about needing space to figure things out and staying with Jasmine for a while. No apology, no explanation, just a request that I not contact her until she was ready to talk. I crumpled up the note and tossed it in the trash, then made myself coffee and scrambled eggs like it was any other Wednesday. Because in a way, it was. I'd been living like a single man for months without realizing it. I called in sick to work, first time in 2 years, and spent the morning making phone calls. The bank, the insurance company, the leasing office for Nora's yoga studio. Amazing how much paperwork is involved in untangling a life. By noon, I was sitting at Murphy's Tavern, the kind of dive bar where the regulars know your name and your troubles, and nobody judges you for drinking beer with your lunch. Mick Donnelly, the bouncer and my oldest friend, slid onto the bar stool next to me. You look like hell, he said, signaling the bartender for his usual. Feel worse. Want to talk about it? I pulled out Spencer's phone. Nora had left it behind in her hurry to escape, and slid it across the bar. My wife's been having an affair. Mick scrolled through a few messages, his expression darkening. Jesus, Grant. How long? 3 months that I know of. Could be longer. You confront her? Last night. She's staying with Jasmine now, probably planning her next move with Spencer. Mick handed the phone back. What are you going to do? Divorce her. But first, I'm going to make sure she understands exactly what she's giving up. Meaning? I took a long drink of my beer, feeling the cold liquid wash away some of the bitterness in my throat. Meaning I've spent 3 years making Nora's life possible. I co-signed her studio lease, I pay half her expenses, I even helped her buy that BMW she loves so much. She thinks she can just walk away from all that and land in Spencer's arms without consequences. So you're going to cut her off? I'm going to let reality cut her off. I'm just removing the safety net. An elderly woman at the end of the bar turned around, and I recognized Mrs. Halloran from across the street. She had the kind of hearing that came from decades of eavesdropping on neighborhood drama. "Excuse me," she said, walking over with her drink. "I couldn't help but overhear. You're talking about Nora, aren't you?" "Mrs. Halloran, I didn't know you came to Murphy's. Best fish and chips in town," she said, settling onto the stool next to me. "And the only place where people tell the truth. I've been watching your house for months, dear. Saw that man coming and going when you weren't home." "Spencer? Tall fellow? Drives the fancy white car?" "Yes, him. He's been visiting your wife since August. Always parks 2 streets over and walks through the Hendersons' backyard." Mick leaned forward. "You saw him sneaking around?" "Honey, I see everything. That's what happens when you're 83 and have insomnia. I know which neighbors are cheating, which ones are stealing packages, and which ones are growing marijuana in their basement." "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. "Wasn't my place, but now that she's gone." Mrs. Halloran patted my hand. "That girl never deserved you, Grant. Too much ambition, not enough character." I finished my beer and stood up. "Thanks, Mrs. Halloran, that actually helps." "What are you going to do?" Mick asked. "First, I'm going to visit Spencer's Tesla. Then I'm going to stop by the yoga studio." "Want backup?" "Not yet, but stay close to your phone." I left Murphy's and drove to the business park where Spencer worked as some kind of wellness entrepreneur, whatever that meant. His white Tesla was parked in the spot marked "Reserved for S. Vero," because of course it was. I walked around the car slowly, admiring its sleek lines and spotless exterior. Spencer clearly loved this car, which made what I did next even more satisfying. I didn't key it. That would be vandalism. Instead, I used a dry erase marker to write a message on the windshield. "Thanks for the ride, champ. N." I copied the handwriting from one of Spencer's text messages, making it look like Nora had left him a note. Then I placed a small gift box on the hood. Inside were printed copies of every text message and photo from the burner phone, along with a note in my own handwriting. "Thought you might want copies for your scrapbook. GS." The yoga studio was my next stop. Nora wasn't there. She was probably hiding at Jasmine's mansion planning her next move. But Lena Martinez, the receptionist, was working the front desk. "Grant," she said, looking surprised. "I thought you were at work." "Took a personal day. Is Nora around?" "She called in sick, said she was dealing with some personal issues." Lena lowered her voice conspiratorially. "Is everything okay?" She seemed really upset when she called. "We're having some marital problems," I said, which was the understatement of the year. "Actually, I need to talk to you about the lease." "The lease?" "I co-signed it when Nora opened the studio, but given our situation, I need to remove my name from the agreement." Lena's face went pale. "Can you do that?" "According to my lawyer, yes. The landlord will need to approve Nora as the sole guarantor or find someone else to co-sign. But Nora doesn't have the credit score to qualify on her own. That's why you co-signed in the first place." "I know." Lena stared at me for a long moment, processing the implications. "Grant, if you remove your name from the lease, the studio will probably have to close. I know. You can't do that to her. This place is her dream. Her dream, my credit score, my financial risk. She made her choice, Lena. Now I'm making mine." I left the studio and drove home, feeling lighter than I had in months. The house was quiet without Nora's constant chatter about her friends and their opinions. I made myself dinner, watched a baseball game, and went to bed early. Around midnight, my phone started buzzing with text messages. Spencer, we need to talk. Spencer, this is harassment. Spencer, I'm calling the police. I turned off my phone and went back to sleep. Thursday morning brought rain and a knock on my front door. I opened it to find Spencer Varro standing on my porch, looking like he'd slept in his clothes. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. We need to talk, he said. Do we? I leaned against the doorframe, not inviting him in. I thought the gift box said everything I needed to say. You can't just destroy people's property. What property? I used a dry erase marker and left you some reading material, both completely legal. Spencer stepped closer, trying to use his height advantage to intimidate me. You're harassing me and Nora. I'm protecting myself from fraud. There's a difference. Fraud? You and my wife have been conducting an affair using resources I paid for. She drove my car to meet you, used my credit cards for your dates, and lied to me about her whereabouts for months. In some states, that's considered theft of marital assets. Spencer's jaw tightened. Nora told me you were controlling. Controlling? I didn't even know she was cheating until I found her second phone. If I was controlling, don't you think I would have noticed 3 months of lies? She's leaving you. I know, I told her to. That caught him off guard. What? I told her to pack a bag and go be with you. Didn't she mention that part? Spencer shifted uncomfortably. She said you threw her out. I gave her a choice. She chose you. Congratulations. Then why are you harassing us? I stepped out onto the porch, closing the door behind me. Spencer, let me explain something to you. For 3 years, I've been Nora's safety net. I co-signed her business lease, I pay half her expenses, I even helped her buy that car she drives. She got to play entrepreneur and social butterfly because I handled the boring stuff like credit scores and mortgage payments. So? So now she's your problem. You want to be with her? Great. You get to be her financial support system. You get to co-sign her lease, cover her expenses, and deal with her need for constant validation. Spencer's face went white. We're not at that stage yet. What stage are you at? Because according to those text messages, you two have been planning a future together. It's complicated. No, it's not. You wanted to play house with a married woman because it was exciting and risk-free. But now she's not married anymore and suddenly it's complicated. I started walking toward my truck, leaving Spencer standing on the porch. Give Nora my regards, and tell her the studio lease needs to be resolved by next week. I drove to work, finally ready to face my colleagues and pretend everything was normal. But normal was relative when your phone kept buzzing with increasingly frantic messages from your soon-to-be ex-wife. Nora, Spencer told me what you did. Nora, you can't remove your name from the lease. Nora, we need to talk. Nora, please don't destroy my business over this. I waited until lunch to respond. Your business, your responsibility. You made your choice. That afternoon, I got a call from Detective Ray Greer, an old acquaintance from my college days, who now worked for the Augusta Police Department. Grant, I heard you might be going through a rough patch. News travels fast. Small town, big mouths. Look, I'm calling as a friend, not a cop. Someone filed a harassment complaint against you. Spencer? I can't say. But I wanted to give you a heads up. Keep things legal. Don't give anyone ammunition to use against you in a divorce proceeding. Everything I've done has been legal. I know. But legal and smart aren't always the same thing. You want to hurt someone? Make it loud. Public embarrassment lasts longer than bruises. Thanks for the advice. Don't mention it. Literally. This conversation never happened. That evening, I was back at Murphy's, nursing a beer and thinking about Detective Greer's words, when Mick slid onto the stool next to me. Heard you had a visitor this morning, he said. Spencer paid me a house call. How'd that go? He's starting to realize that sleeping with a married woman is easier than dating a divorced one. Mick laughed. Cold. Realistic. Spencer thought he was getting the fun parts of Nora without the responsibility. Now he's learning that actions have consequences. What's your next move? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Paige from the studio. Can we meet? I have information about Nora and her friends. I showed the message to Mick. Looks like I'm about to find out. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop downtown. Paige Winters was one of Nora's yoga instructors, a quiet woman in her 30s who'd always seemed uncomfortable with Jasmine's crowd. Thank you for meeting me, she said, sliding into the booth across from me. What's this about? Nora and her friends have been planning something. They think you're going to make trouble for them, so they want to get ahead of it. What kind of trouble? They're going to claim you were abusive during the marriage. Jasmine knows a lawyer who specializes in getting women favorable divorce settlements by painting their husbands as controlling or violent. I felt my pressure spike. I never laid a hand on Nora. I know, but they don't care about the truth. They care about winning. Why are you telling me this? Paige looked down at her coffee cup. Because I've watched Nora change over the past year. She used to be kind, genuine, but Jasmine and her friends turned her into someone else, someone who thinks she deserves everything and owes nothing. And you don't approve? I think they're destroying her, and now they're trying to destroy you too. I leaned back in the booth, processing this information. When are they planning to make their move? Soon, probably at the Harvest Festival this weekend. Jasmine wants to make a public scene, get witnesses to back up their story. The Harvest Festival was Augusta's biggest social event of the year, drawing crowds from all over central Maine. If Nora and her friends were planning to stage a confrontation there, they'd have plenty of witnesses. Paige, would you be willing to testify about what you've heard? If it comes to that, yes, I have recordings. Recordings? She pulled out her phone and played a brief audio clip. It was Nora's voice, discussing how to make Grant look unstable during their public confrontation. I've been recording their conversations for weeks, Paige said. I knew they were planning something, and I wanted evidence. I sat back, stunned. Why would you do that? Because someone needs to stand up to them. They think they can manipulate everyone around them without consequences. I looked at this quiet woman who'd just handed me the ammunition I needed to protect myself, and I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Hope. Paige, how would you like to help me give them exactly what they deserve? Friday night, the eve of the Harvest Festival, I was in my basement workshop putting the finishing touches on my plan when the doorbell rang. I climbed the stairs to find Nora standing on the porch, looking like she hadn't slept in days. We need to talk, she said. Do we? Grant, please, can I come in? I stepped aside and let her into the house that had been our home. She looked around the living room like she was seeing it for the first time. The furniture we'd picked out together, the photos from our honeymoon, the life we'd built before it all went wrong. The place looks good, she said. It's peaceful. She winced at that. I heard about the lease. What about it? You know I can't qualify as the sole guarantor. Without your co-signature, I'll lose the studio. That's unfortunate. Grant, that studio is my life. No, Spencer is your life. The studio is just a business. She sat down on the couch and I noticed she was wearing the dress I'd bought her for our anniversary last year. The psychological manipulation was almost impressive. I made a mistake, she said. Which one? The affair, the lies, or getting caught? All of it. I was confused, and Jasmine and her friends made everything seem so simple. They said I deserved better, that I was settling for less than I was worth. And now? Now I realize that what I had with you was real. What I have with Spencer is just fantasy. I sat down in the chair across from her, maintaining distance. What happened to feeling alive? What happened to me being too comfortable? I was wrong. Were you? Or are you just realizing that Spencer doesn't want to be your new safety net? Her eyes filled with tears. He broke up with me yesterday. And there it was, the real reason for this visit. Spencer had cut and run when things got complicated, leaving Nora to face the consequences of her choices alone. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and I meant it. Not because I wanted her back, but because I could see the genuine pain in her eyes. "Can we try again? Can we go to counseling? Work things out?" "Nora, you spent 3 months lying to my face while sleeping with another man. You planned to humiliate me publicly and claim I was abusive to get a better divorce settlement. What exactly would we be working out? How do you know about—" She stopped, realizing she'd just confirmed Paige's information. "About your plan to destroy my reputation at the festival tomorrow. I have friends too, Nora. The difference is, mine actually care about me." She stood up, her sadness transforming into anger. "You've been planning this whole thing, haven't you? The lease, the harassment, all of it. I've been protecting myself from a woman who was planning to falsely accuse me of abuse. There's a difference. I never would have gone through with it." "Wouldn't you? Because I have recordings that suggest otherwise." Her face went pale. "What recordings?" "The ones where you and Jasmine discuss how to make Grant look unstable during your public confrontation. The ones where you plan to claim I was controlling and possibly violent. Should I play them for you?" Nora sank back onto the couch, the fight going out of her. "Who recorded us?" "Someone who got tired of watching you destroy everything good in your life for the approval of people who don't actually care about you. Jasmine cares about me. Jasmine cares about drama. You were her entertainment, Nora, her project, the boring married woman she could transform into something more exciting." "That's not true. Isn't it? Where is she now? Where is Jasmine when you're facing the consequences of the plan she helped you create?" Nora didn't answer, because we both knew the truth. Jasmine was probably at home, planning her outfit for tomorrow's festival, completely unconcerned with the wreckage she'd helped create. "I'm going to lose everything," Nora whispered. "You already lost everything. You just didn't realize it yet." She looked up at me with those green eyes that had once made me forget my own name. "What if I told everyone the truth? What if I admitted that I lied, that you never hurt me?" "It's too late for that." "It's not too late. We could start over." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at Mrs. Halloran's house across the street. The old woman was sitting on her porch, probably watching our drama unfold like her favorite TV show. "Nora, do you remember what you said to me the night I found Spencer's phone?" "I said a lot of things." "You said your friends think I hold you back. You said it's over. You said Spencer makes you feel alive, but I just make you feel safe." I was angry and confused. "No, you were honest. Maybe for the first time in months." I turned back to face her. "You were right about one thing. I did make you feel safe. Safe enough to take risks with other men. Safe enough to lie to my face for 3 months. Safe enough to plan my destruction when you got caught. Grant, you got everything you wanted, Nora. Freedom from our boring marriage, excitement with Spencer, the approval of your new friends. The only thing you didn't count on was having to live with the consequences." She started crying then, real tears this time, not the practiced manipulation from before. "I don't know what to do." "Figure it out. You're a strong, independent woman, remember? That's what Jasmine kept telling you." I walked to the front door and opened it. "You should go." "Where?" "Spencer won't take my calls. Jasmine is avoiding me, and I can't afford my own place without the studio income." "That sounds like a personal problem." She stood up slowly, like an old woman. "You really hate me, don't you?" "No, I don't hate you. Hate requires caring, and I don't care about you anymore. You ruined that over 3 months of lies and betrayal." She walked to the door, then turned back one last time. What are you going to do at the festival tomorrow? I'm going to enjoy the apple cider and watch the leaves change. What are you going to do? I don't know. Well, you'd better figure it out, because if you and your friends try to ambush me with false accusations, I'll make sure everyone in town hears those recordings. She left without another word, and I watched her drive away in the BMW I'd helped her buy. Tomorrow would be interesting. Saturday dawned crisp and clear, perfect weather for the harvest festival. I spent the morning at Murphy's, having breakfast with Mick and going over our plan one more time. You sure about this? He asked, cutting into his eggs. They want a public confrontation? They'll get one, just not the kind they're expecting. And Paige is ready? She's been ready for weeks. She's tired of watching Jasmine manipulate everyone around her. Mrs. Halloran shuffled over to our table, carrying her coffee and a plate of pancakes. Mind if I join you, boys? I want to hear about your plan for today. It's probably better if you don't know the details, I said. Honey, I've been watching neighborhood drama for 60 years. I think I can handle whatever you're planning. I looked at this 83-year-old woman who'd become an unlikely ally, and I made a decision. Okay, here's what we're going to do. The festival was in full swing by the time we arrived. Families wandered between booths selling crafts and food, children ran around with painted faces, and a local band played on the main stage. It looked like a Norman Rockwell painting, if Norman Rockwell had painted scenes of marital revenge. I spotted Nora near the yoga studio's booth, looking uncomfortable in a flowing dress that screamed, "Victim of domestic abuse." Jasmine was with her, along with 2 other women from their social circle, all of them scanning the crowd like they were planning a military operation. There they are, Mick said, right on schedule. We positioned ourselves near the main stage, where most of the crowd was gathered. Paige was already in place by the sound booth, her phone ready to play the recordings through the festival's PA system if needed. At exactly 2 o'clock, Jasmine started walking toward me, with Nora trailing behind her like a reluctant accomplice. The other women followed, creating a small parade of righteous indignation. "Grant Solen," Jasmine said loudly, making sure people around us could hear, "We need to talk." "Do we?" I kept my voice calm and reasonable. "Yes, we do. About how you've been harassing Nora since she left you." A small crowd was starting to gather, drawn by the promise of drama. I could see phones coming out, ready to record whatever happened next. "I haven't harassed anyone," I said. "I've been protecting my financial interests during our divorce. By sabotaging her business, by threatening her boyfriend, by removing my name from a lease I no longer wanted to guarantee, and by asking another man to stop sneaking into my house. Hardly harassment." Jasmine stepped closer, her voice getting louder. "You're trying to destroy her because she had the courage to leave an abusive marriage." And there it was, the false accusation, delivered right on schedule in front of dozens of witnesses. The crowd murmured, and I could feel the shift in their attention. This was the moment that would define the rest of my life, either as the abusive husband Jasmine was painting me as, or as something else entirely. "Abusive?" I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "That's interesting. Nora, do you want to tell everyone about the abuse, or should I?" Nora looked like she wanted to disappear. "Grant, please don't do this." "Don't do what? Don't defend myself against false accusations? Don't tell the truth about why our marriage ended?" Jasmine sensed that things weren't going according to plan. "Everyone knows you were controlling and possessive." "Everyone knows?" I pulled out my phone and held it up. "Because I have recordings of you and Nora planning this exact confrontation. Would you like me to play them for everyone?" The crowd pressed closer, sensing that the drama was about to reach its climax. I could see Detective Greer in the distance, watching but not interfering. "You're bluffing," Jasmine said, but her voice lacked conviction. I nodded to Paige, who was standing by the sound booth. She connected her phone to the PA system, and suddenly Nora's voice was echoing across the festival grounds. We need to make Grant look unstable during the confrontation. If we can get him to lose his temper in public, everyone will believe he was abusive." The crowd went silent. You could hear the wind rustling through the maple trees. Jasmine's voice came through the speakers next. "Perfect. I'll provoke him. You play the victim, and we'll have dozens of witnesses. He'll be lucky to get visitation rights to his own house." I looked around at the faces in the crowd. Neighbors, co-workers, people I'd known for years. They were staring at Nora and Jasmine with a mixture of disgust and disbelief. "So," I said into the silence, "who wants to hear the recording where they discuss how to split up my assets in the divorce?" "Turn it off," Nora whispered. "I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Could you speak up?" "Turn it off!" she shouted, and everyone could hear the desperation in her voice. I nodded to Paige again, and the recording stopped. The silence that followed was deafening. "For the record," I said to the crowd, "I never laid a hand on my wife. The only thing I'm guilty of is trusting someone who spent 3 months lying to my face while sleeping with another man." Someone in the crowd started clapping. Then someone else joined in. Within seconds, half the festival was applauding, and Nora looked like she wanted to crawl into a hole. "This isn't over," Jasmine hissed, but she was already backing away from the crowd. "Yes, it is," I said. "It's been over since the night I found Spencer's phone. Everything that happened after that was just cleanup." Nora was crying now, real tears of shame and regret. "Grant, I'm sorry. I never wanted it to go this far." "But it did go this far. You planned to destroy my reputation to get a better divorce settlement. You were willing to falsely accuse me of abuse to win a game I didn't even know we were playing. I was scared and confused. No, you were greedy and selfish. There's a difference." The crowd was starting to disperse, but I could hear the whispers starting. By Monday morning, everyone in town would know the truth about Nora Marlin Solen and her friends. Jasmine grabbed Nora's arm. "We're leaving." "Good idea," I said. "And Jasmine, next time you want to destroy someone's life, make sure you're not being recorded." They walked away quickly, pushing through the crowd like they were escaping a crime scene, which, in a way, they were. Mick clapped me on the shoulder. "That was beautiful, man. Absolutely beautiful." Mrs. Halloran appeared at my elbow, grinning like a teenager. "That was better than my soap operas." I looked around at the festival, at the families enjoying their Saturday afternoon, at the life I'd almost lost to someone else's lies and manipulation. "You know what?" I said. "I think I'll have some of that apple cider now." 3 weeks later, I was sitting at Murphy's Tavern, celebrating the finalization of my divorce. The papers had been signed that morning, with Nora agreeing to a simple division of assets and no alimony. She'd dropped all claims of abuse, probably because her lawyer had heard the recordings and advised her that pursuing false accusations would likely result in criminal charges. "So, how does it feel to be a free man?" Mick asked, raising his beer. "Like I can breathe again." The tavern was busier than usual for a Tuesday night, filled with people who wanted to congratulate me or just hear the story firsthand. Word had spread quickly after the festival, and I'd become something of a local celebrity, the guy who'd outsmarted the scheming ex-wife and her manipulative friends. "Grant," Mrs. Halloran called from her usual table by the window, "come tell us what happened to that Spencer fellow." I walked over to her table, where she was holding court with 3 other neighborhood gossips. These women knew everything that happened in Augusta, within hours of it occurring. "Spencer moved back to Boston," I said. "Apparently, his wellness business wasn't as successful as he claimed. Turns out it's hard to be a guru when everyone knows you sleep with married women." "And the yoga studio?" "Closed last week. Nora couldn't make the rent without my co-signature on the lease." "Where is she now?" "Living with her sister in Portland, working at a regular gym. Jasmine and her crew dropped her as soon as the scandal broke." Mrs. Halloran shook her head. "That girl had everything and threw it away. For what? A few months of excitement?" "She got exactly what she wanted," I said. "Freedom from our boring marriage, distance from my middle-class lifestyle, and the chance to find someone more exciting than me. But she lost everything. That's what happens when you don't think about consequences. I returned to the bar, where Mick was talking to Paige. She'd quit the yoga studio before it closed and was now teaching classes at the community center. "How are you doing?" I asked her. "Better. It feels good to be away from all that toxicity." "Any regrets about the recordings?" "None. Someone needed to stand up to them." She finished her drink and gathered her purse. "I should go. Early class tomorrow." After she left, Mick and I sat in comfortable silence, watching the baseball game on the TV above the bar. It was a perfect October evening in Maine, the kind of night that made you appreciate simple pleasures. "You ever think about dating again?" Mick asked. "Maybe eventually, but not for a while. I need to remember who I am when I'm not trying to make someone else happy." "Fair enough." My phone buzzed with a text message. For a moment, I thought it might be Nora, but it was just a work email. She'd stopped trying to contact me after the festival, probably realizing that bridge was permanently burned. "You know what the funny thing is?" I said. "What?" I actually loved her. Even after I found out about the affair, part of me wanted to work things out, but she ruined that when she decided to destroy me instead of just leaving honestly. Think she regrets it? I'm sure she does. But regret doesn't undo 3 months of lies and a plan to falsely accuse me of abuse. Some things can't be forgiven. The door opened, and Detective Greer walked in, still in his uniform. He spotted me at the bar and came over. "Grant, how are you holding up?" "Can't complain. Thanks for the advice about keeping things legal." "Worked out well for you. That was some impressive planning." "I had good help." Greer ordered a coffee and sat down next to me. "For what it's worth, I think you handled it perfectly. A lot of guys in your situation would have done something stupid and ended up in jail." The thought crossed my mind. "But you didn't. You used your head instead of your fists, and now she's the one dealing with the consequences." We talked for a few more minutes before Greer had to leave for his patrol. The bar was starting to empty out, and I realized I was genuinely happy for the first time in months. "Last call," the bartender announced. "One more," I said, raising my glass to Mick. "To new beginnings. And to getting exactly what you deserve." I thought about that toast as I walked home through the quiet streets of Augusta. Nora had gotten exactly what she deserved, the consequences of her choices, delivered with surgical precision and perfect timing. She'd wanted excitement, freedom, and a better life than the one we'd built together. Instead, she'd lost her business, her friends, her lover, and her reputation. She was working at a gym in Portland, living with her sister, and trying to rebuild a life she'd destroyed for a few months of stolen pleasure. As for me, I had my house, my job, my real friends, and my self-respect. I'd learned that I was stronger than I thought, smarter than my enemies assumed, and capable of playing a long game when necessary. I climbed the steps to my front porch and looked back at Mrs. Halloran's house. She was sitting in her window, keeping watch over the neighborhood like always. She waved, and I waved back. Inside, the house was quiet and peaceful. No more lies, no more drama, no more walking on eggshells around someone who was planning my destruction. Just silence and the promise of a future I could build on my own terms. I poured myself a glass of whiskey and sat in my favorite chair, thinking about everything that had happened. Nora had been right about one thing. I did make her feel safe. Safe enough to betray me, safe enough to plan my ruin, safe enough to think she could destroy me without consequences. But safety is a two-way street. And when someone uses your trust as a weapon against you, they forfeit any claim to your protection. My phone buzzed one last time. It was a text from an unknown number. "I heard what happened. I'm sorry for everything. N." I deleted the message without responding. Some conversations are over before they begin. I finished my whiskey and went upstairs to bed, sleeping peacefully in a house that was finally mine alone. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, and maybe even new relationships built on honesty instead of lies. But tonight, I was content to be exactly where I was, free from the woman who'd tried to destroy me, surrounded by people who actually cared about me, and finally able to see a future that didn't include walking on eggshells around someone else's betrayal. Nora had wanted everything: excitement, status, freedom, and security. In the end, she got everything she wanted. She just didn't want everything she got. And that, I thought as I drifted off to sleep, was exactly the point.